President Buhari goes to the United Nations General Assembly in New York to make a special plea for Africa.
With an economy already in recession, the Nigerian Central Bank has kept its benchmark lending rate steady, saying the move is in the best interest of the nation.
And disability is not inability. Some special kids in Kenya battling the arts and making big plans for their future. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Joker Rogers from Channels Television in Lagos. Welcome to the show and stay tuned as we feature a variety of stories from Nigeria and across Africa.
And I'm Vincent Makori, Voice of America, coming to you from Studio 52 at our global headquarters in Washington. Now, at the 71st General Assembly last week in New York, President Muhammadu Buhari made a case for a permanent seat for Africa in the United Nations Security Council, emphasizing that the reform would benefit all member states. Channels Television State House correspondent Chukwuma Onekusi has more.
On day 3 of the 71st United Nations General Assembly, the President joins other world leaders to mark the first anniversary of the adoption of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. First, he tells them that corruption freezes development and undermines the attainment of Sustainable Development Goals. He speaks on measures to reduce the cost of governance and increase expenditure on infrastructure and ensure environmental best practices in Nigeria. President Buhari receives applause on the effort to deal with Boko Haram and called for enhanced international cooperation to defeat the global scourge of terrorism.
Nigeria has continued to combat terrorism based on the established rules of engagement and in conformity with international best practices.
The Nigerian president says Nigeria stands ready to serve Africa and the world on a reformed Security Council to advance international peace and security.
Nigeria therefore reiterates its call for the reform of the United Nations Security Council, in particular to reflect equitable and fair representation and greater transparency, legitimacy and inclusiveness in its decision-making. Africa should be adequately represented on the United Nations Security Council in the permanent member category.
At the last count, over 190 world leaders addressed the Assembly, while the President of the 71st session of the United Nations General Assembly says this is the time to get the goals going. On his part, President Obama, who is making his last outing on the General Assembly as President, says there is no time to waste in giving humanity a peaceful planet using the 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
In order to move forward, though, we do have to acknowledge that the existing path to global integration requires a course correction. Because too often those trumpeting the benefits of globalization have ignored inequality within and among nations, have ignored the enduring appeal of ethnic and sectarian identities. And as these real problems have been neglected, alternative visions of the world have pressed forward, both in the wealthiest countries and in the poorest.
The speeches no doubt will resonate for another 1 year when they will all gather here again to assess their performances, hoping that the Sustainable Development Goals will indeed transform the world for the next 15 years. From the United Nations headquarters in New York City, Chukwuma Onekusi, Channels Television News.
As Great Britain exits from the European Union, the prospect for regional integration in Africa is in focus, with issues such as monetary policy, unemployment, and other developmental issues high on the agenda of most meetings on the continent. Now, let's take a closer look at this. And joining us on the program is the Executive Secretary of the African Capacity Building Foundation in Harare, Zimbabwe, Professor Emmanuel Nadozie. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, what are the prospects of regional integration in Africa, given that at the sub-regional level, West African countries have not been able to agree on most things, especially coming up with a single currency structure, which was proposed years ago?
Yes, I think the prospects for regional integration in Africa are quite good. And if we are going to be judging the prospects by the establishment of a single monetary zone, then one can easily argue that the success has not been there. But if you look at the treaty, Abuja Treaty, that established the African Common Market and Economic Union, you would see that already the provision for a single currency or monetary union is supposed to happen way ahead of that, about 2024 to about 2028. So Africa is still within the limits. But if we look much more carefully, we can see that in spite of some of the setbacks and the slowness in achieving goals, a lot has already been achieved. Whether it's in terms of free movement of people or in terms of free movement of goods, ECOWAS region is an example of that, where this has been established for quite some time now.
Now, there are fears that countries like Nigeria and South Africa may dominate such an agreement if it does come into place to the disadvantage of other smaller countries. Are these fears unfounded?
No, I don't think people should fear that. But I see it from another angle, that one of the reasons why regional integration has not progressed the way it should progress in Africa is because of lack of leadership. And leadership is essential and is central for regional integration to happen. The example is, this leadership is not just about individuals, but also about countries.
What's Africa losing by not achieving regional integration?
African countries will lose a lot if they are not integrated, which helps them to unify themselves and be able to have an effective engagement with the rest of the world and an effective representation in the international arena. That's one. Number two is on the economic front, which I think is the most important. Imagine 54 countries, some of which are less than 1 million people in terms of their population, and a lot of them, many of them are less than 5 million people. And these are small-sized markets, which is not attractive to anybody who wants to do business in Africa. Therefore, Africa will stand to lose massive investments, foreign investments, and inflow of capital, and all kinds of things, including technology and the rest of them, just because of this fragmentation. But imagine that instead of having small countries of 5 million each, and you have the entire Africa, 1+ billion people as a single market, having one currency, and where people can do business, then you can begin to think that what happened in China can easily happen on the continent. So in a sense, I'm saying that without regional integration, Africa stands to lose a great deal.
Professor Emmanuel Nadozie, thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you very much for having me, and I wish all the best to your viewers.
All eyes were on Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee last week to see what it will do with its lending rates as the country battles to get out of a recession. Now, after its two-day meeting, the CBN's rate-setting committee voted to keep rates at 14%, and that's despite calls by the fiscal authorities to lower the rate to ease borrowing. Here's more of that story from Channels TV correspondent Omologo Nadi.
But not the least of the...
About 24 hours ahead of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, the Minister of Finance told captains of industries at a presidential business meeting at the State House in Abuja that lower interest rates are expected in a recession. But dousing the high expectations of business concerns over lower rates, the governor of the central bank announced a retention of all monetary instruments at the current levels before the recession set in.
All 10 Monetary Policy Committee members voted as follows. 1. Retain the MPR at 14%. Retain the CRR at 22.5%. Retain the liquidity ratio at 30%. And retain the asymmetric window at +200 and -500 basis points around the MPR.
He says previous rate cuts put pressure on the economy as the lower rates fueled the demand for forex. He also says making provisions for governments to borrow at lower rates might stimulate demands, but also creates a risk of very high demand with much less supply.
If you borrow at lower rates to stimulate spending, what that does is that, well, yes, it stimulates demand for goods. But when you stimulate demand for goods by providing cash or money to be spent without taking action to boost industrial capacity, taking actions to boost manufacturing output, what happens is that you will see a situation where you have too much money chasing too few goods, which will also worsen the inflationary conditions that we are now.
The expectations at this unusual economic times is for fiscal policy to harmonize with monetary policy and also for monetary policy rates to move closer to the inflation.
I felt that he must have bought into the larger arguments that suggested that a double-digit growth target should be a bold initiative that Nigeria should come up with. It will send a very powerful signal to both domestic investors and to foreign investors.
But the central bank governor says lower rates are not the immediate solution. Omelogo, Nadi Channels Television News.